Handheld gaming used to provide unique worlds and experiences that you simply couldn't get anywhere else. Nowadays, there's a much bigger push to simply take the games that you play on the big screen, on a monitor, whatever that console may be, and take them on the go, which is great. But when portable systems like the Game Boy, the Game Gear, PSP, they're all trying to build up their great exclusive libraries alongside the home consoles, it really brought on this large lineup of games from recognizable franchises that were all different in a wide range of ways. The reality is, no matter how much you may have enjoyed a lot of these games, it was very clear that the big companies were saving all of the big money for the next big console release, while the handheld releases were all uniquely experimental in regards to mechanics, overall budget, even who developed it. Ratchet & Clank on PSP was not made by Insomniac like the main games were. The Mario & Luigi series showed a side of this franchise that you couldn't get on console, and boy, we got some jank-ass Sonic games on the Game Gear, boy, like Sonic Blast, oh my god. And hell, sometimes you would even get the inverse, with handheld Pokemon being the main thing while the consoles got exclusively, weird stuff, like god, Pokemon Channel, that was a weird piece of software right there. Point being, handheld gaming and console gaming, despite how some companies are trying to market them, were two totally different worlds. Up until, like, the Switch and the Steam Deck decided to show up and change the entire game. I guess, literally. And of course today, we're talking about The Legend of Zelda. You know, for the majority of this series' life, a lot of people were making the arguments that these games were just too similar to each other. From Ocarina to Wind Waker to Skyward Sword, doesn't matter, say whichever one you want. They were far too derivative, and Nintendo can't make an original Zelda game to save their lives. I think that was often said by people who just simply like to complain, but it is what it is. On the handhelds, though, that couldn't be any further from the truth. Assuming the Switch's console handheld hybrid idea is here to stay, then we can officially cap off the portable Zelda lineup at 7 games, at least 1 per console generation. Of course, this is simply referring to the proper adventures here, not like the classic NES series ports of Zelda 1 and 2, those are pretty self-explanatory. There's Hyrule Warriors, that got a 3DS port for some reason, always forget Legends exists. Can't forget about Game & Watch Zelda, conveniently ported to Game & Watch Gallery 4, that's nice, you know, game preservation and all that. Of course, there's the Game Watch Zelda, not to be confused with the Game & Watch Zelda, this is simply Game Watch Zelda. What, you didn't know about this? Oh my god, you fake fan. Also not to be confused with the newer Game & Watch Zelda, giving us the worst way to play a few classic Zelda games, and also Vermin for some reason. There's the Link to the Past GBA port that features a handful of changes and even a brand new side quest and dungeon, that's pretty cool. Of course, there's both Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask for the 3DS, which feature a ton of changes, so much so that people prefer the 64 Majora's Mask to the 3DS one. I am not that person, but hey, they still exist, and therefore, they're pretty cool. But are they cooler than My Nintendo Picross, The Legend of Zelda, Twilight Princess for the Nintendo 3DS exclusive from the My Nintendo service? I did not think so. Certainly not as cool as that time Nintendo put a Twilight Princess trailer on a DS cartridge for E3 2005 that currently goes for, oh Jesus Christ. All I'm trying to say here is that portable Zelda and home console Zelda were two very different things that just so happened to have a lot of elements overlapping. Yes, the console games were changing things up visually with each installment, and each one is great in its own right, but it was on the handhelds where almost every single adventure was created to be different than the last. As for the multiplayer games like Four Swords and Triforce Heroes, as well as those weird-ass Tingle games for the DS, well, stay tuned. Those games are gonna get their time to shine in the future. Just be patient. I got a lot on my plate for this one video as it is. So today, I want to show some appreciation for some of the Zelda games that really helped define Nintendo's handheld legacy. Alright, listen, I know this is on console, it is a remake, but it is a console game, and some of these games are getting released digitally on the Nintendo Switch Online app, so what makes a handheld game anymore? Like, I get it. You know exactly what I'm trying to get at here. And naturally, there is no better place to start than the very beginning. The frog for whom the bell tolls. Oh what, I'm sorry, were you expecting something else? I'll never miss an opportunity to talk about Frog Game. Many people do know this story by now, but let's quickly jump forward to Link's Awakening, a game that breaks many conventions of the typical Zelda format, including a bunch of references to other Nintendo characters. Yoshi, Dr. Wright from SimCity, and even Kirby, man. Hell yeah, dude, there he is. But of course, partway through your adventure, there's that one house featuring a character named Prince Richard, surrounded by a bunch of frogs with a unique theme song to accompany him. It's not like Richard has much to do with the plot, he tells you to gather some items from the castle nearby, and after doing so, Richard will give you a dungeon key, and then you move on, and that's about it. And alas, Richard was not an original character. He's from this Game Boy game that never left Japan. Thank God for fan translations, man. Now the game is readily accessible, and it is so worth it. The kicker is, before playing it, I thought Richard was the main character, but no, he's not the main character of this game. It's that random assist trophy little guy in Smash that can turn into a frog and a snake. That's the main character. Prince Sable. That unique and abstract narrative with a quirky sense of humor that really helped Link's Game Boy debut stand out is in full force here in Frog Game. It's just a lot easier to say Frog Game, I'm gonna be honest with you. I mean, it's a plot that has you being cursed so that if you fall into water, you turn into a frog. I figure the whole part about this game having a unique narrative is pretty obvious. In general though, it is a pretty simple story about needing to save Princess Tiramisu, and the story has you traveling through different towns, defeating many enemies with quote-unquote combat, which is really just you going into this big old dust cloud and hoping you do more damage than your enemy does. It is exactly how the assist trophy handled things, and that is amazing actually. And also, a whole lot of side-scrolling platforming. Yeah, the top-down stuff is pretty Zelda-like in that it's a lot of exploration and learning what paths to take and what not to take, but the plentiful dungeons and caves in this adventure are actually all platforming based, and it feels surprisingly solid all these years later. This is a really fun game to play. It doesn't feel like it's dated in the slightest. But while the main mechanics in this game are definitely sound, it's all about what exactly you're doing. Like, eventually you free a woolly mammoth and you have to take it down. That's, for some reason, I don't know, I just think that's funny. And this is hours after you take a boat ride to an island to visit Nintendo headquarters to get help from a scientist that will only trust you if you also like sushi with a lot of wasabi. Dude, I am so happy this fan translation exists, man. God, and the music is incredible too. Like the main theme song when you're exploring the overworld, it's so damn good. Listen, this isn't an adventure that is as open and sprawling as a typical Zelda game. It's mostly a pretty linear affair, but knowing how different of a vibe the Game Boy Zelda games would have in the years to follow, and to know that that influence started here, it's really cool to see that this is an adventure that stands out on its own, and it's still a ton of fun. Not many Game Boy games have held up over time, but easily this game does, and it will never not be a damn shame that Nintendo did not localize this back in the day, and yet they published stupid Mickey Mouse magic wands. God, I'm mad now. The origins of the Handheld Zelda lineup, starting off with a different project that is totally independent with Frog Game, is actually very similar to how the Mario and Luigi series started with a different project as well, with Tomato Adventure. And I can't speak for everybody here, but something about seeing where these series roots really started from with a fully fleshed out game that's really good, I think that's really cool. Frog Game, highly recommended. Of all the handheld Zelda adventures out there, Link's Awakening is easily the one with the strongest reputation. Not just for being a new entry in the series, but this time on the Game Boy, ooh. It's as I mentioned before, this adventure lacks many of the core ideals that this franchise was built upon. Granted, this is only the fourth game in said franchise, the second of which was already a very weird one, but still. Here we have Link waking up on the mysterious Koholint Island after a shipwreck, and we have a ton of secrets to be uncovered in this weird new place. And while a lot of the core gameplay did remain similar, you know, you get your sword, you'll go through dungeons, you'll find familiar enemies, etc, etc, the world that you inhabit and the characters within could not be more different. There's no Triforce, there's no Ganon, and weirdest of all, no Zelda. You do still get items to help you out along the way, but for the first time ever, you can have a loadout where neither button option is your sword. Granted, this is more so due to button limitations than them wanting to actually go about this way, but hey, it led to some new puzzle opportunities like combining your dash with the jump for some high-speed platforming, which is extra helpful for the many side-scrolling sections, injecting a little bit of Zelda 2 into a more traditional top-down Zelda format. There's also this level of self-awareness with the villagers too, like there are these two kids playing catch that tell you how to save the game, before also saying that they don't even know what that means. You'll find this father in his house who will warn you that he will be lost later on in the game. And sure enough, he is. This thing, like, okay, so there's this weird little wiggly enemy, you know, his name is Kookman, by the way, found that out, that will zap you if you slash it, and when you do, it'll say a comment, like, it can display millions of polygons. Yo, what the fuck? You can steal an item from the village shop if you want to. All you gotta do is grab the item and spin around a few times, and then when he's not looking, boom, you're gone. But the thing is, if you do, the next time you walk in, the shopkeeper will kill you, and then your save file will permanently be labeled as Thief. That is amazing. And that doesn't even include all of the Nintendo references that I mentioned earlier. Like, dude, Kirby's here, man. Of course his game is great. Oh, sorry, his name is Anti-Kirby. Ooh, whatever. Still perfection. Dude, like, Wart is in this game, and he sings to you. It's crazy! Koholint Island is easily the wildest world Link has ever explored, especially once the story really starts to unfold. You see, the only way for Link to escape is to gather all of these magical instruments from the dungeons, and wake the windfish on top of the island's tallest mountain. However, it is slowly revealed to you as you're defeating the bosses that doing so will allegedly cause the island to disappear, as well as all of the inhabitants. It really makes for this interesting dichotomy where the world has some of the most charming elements in the entire series, but the quest is all about working towards a goal that will eliminate all of it. And I'm sorry, I took Marin out on a date and watched her sing the Ballad of the Windfish in front of a bunch of little animals in their own little animal village. I want to be with her for the rest of my life. But that is realistically all window dressing for this adventure. When you really boil this game down to just the gameplay, then yeah, it's a top-down Zelda game, alright. Traversal does hit pretty different once you get the Roc's Feather and then you can jump, and that's really cool, but otherwise, exploring the world, figuring out where your next destination is, going off the beaten path for some heart pieces or other items. It's pretty standard stuff. My only main issue here is that sometimes the path to progression is a bit too obscure. Like, the game does do a decent job pointing you in the right direction, but I would be lying if I said I didn't have to pull up a guide once or twice for some really true proper guidance. But maybe I'm just an idiot. I don't know. I sometimes keep forgetting that Ulrira is right there, ready to direct me whenever you run into a phone booth. He's always ready to go, and I forget to use him. Also, did you know that Ulrira's house is actually shaped like a phone? Yo, that's crazy. Although, one major problem, if I ever see an acorn ever again, I will go on a rampage. You know what? I take it back. The worst thing about this game is easily the stupid acorns. Like, you get one of these things and it gives you an attack bonus until you take enough damage and then it goes away, and that's all fine and good, more attack. Hooray! But they show up so often, and whenever you touch one, it plays this stupid jingle the entire time, overlapping the rest of the game's great music. I see one, I feel fear, it blocks my pathway sometimes and I want to die, and then I have to touch it in order to progress, and then I hear the kill me. In terms of general quality of life though, there are things that the Switch version definitely handles better. The sword, shield, and dash abilities are all permanently active, making item management so much easier since it's less time pausing the game over and over again to change things out. Overworld exploration is no longer consistently having single screens that scroll by, it really helps with the game's flow. And the map is a lot easier to decipher specific landmarks. I like that a whole lot because once again, I'm an idiot. There are some performance issues here and there, which is very strange, but even still, the Switch version, in my opinion, is the way to go here. But it is still nice to go back and appreciate what they managed to accomplish on the Game Boy. Something that is lost and definitely missed in the Switch version is the photo quest, where you can do certain things and go to specific places to activate these cute little photo opportunities that you can print out with the Game Boy printer, because oh man, that thing actually exists. Instead, in the remake, we got a dungeon maker, which... Yeah, it's kind of lame, to be honest. But regardless, whether on Game Boy Color or Switch, Link's Awakening is a great and unforgettable Legend of Zelda adventure, just without the Zelda part. And it is a great beginning for what is to come in the future. Just don't even bother with the original Game Boy version. Like, yeah, it's neat, it's fine. Seeing the game with only 4 colors, ooh, it's so cool. But the DX version is objectively better and features a whole new dungeon based on color. Let's not pretend like the original version is still worth it, okay? Still good, but come on now. Wow, a good Zelda game? What are the odds of that? Despite how different Link's Awakening was at the time of release, it's really what's to come after that is far more compelling in my opinion, because while that original game was made in-house at Nintendo, that's really cool, the next 3 games were developed by Capcom. I know we've all come to accept that, but still a very weird thing. The Oracle of Ages and the Oracle of Seasons. Many people discuss these games as if they're simply 2 halves of a single adventure, and honestly, that always does these games a really big disservice. Like, whenever people would rank Zelda games and they would put these 2 in the same spot, like, no? What are you doing? Sure, Nintendo did go for the same 2-version simultaneous release idea that Pokemon did, which was 2 versions of the same game, but the beauty of the Oracle games is that they are 2 completely independent adventures, each with a different main focus, Ages being puzzles and Seasons being combat. The kicker is, they do just so happen to have a really cool gimmick where you get a specific code after beating whichever game you play first that you can input at the start of the second adventure that will not only include a big final boss and extra ending, but also throw in a bunch of characters that reference your first adventure, and will even provide additional codes to swap between games to unlock items in both games. This is wild, man. This is like some stop and swap from Banjo-Kazooie like tech, but actually in a final product. For this playthrough, I started with ages first. It's higher up in the alphabet. I figured, why not? That's good enough of a reason. In this story, Link has been transported by the power of the Triforce to the world of Labrynna. And before long, it turns out that Impa, who had helped bring you to the Oracle of Ages, Nehru, was taken over by the evil Verin. And once thrown aside, Nehru is taken away for no doubt nefarious purposes. And once again, no Zelda here. That's kind of cool. We're really committing to this. And then, yeah, you go on a quest to save Nehru. Makes sense. One thing that's noticeable right off the bat is that this world feels a lot more populated with a wider range of people. Certainly not as wacky or out there as Link's Awakening was, but still. Just within the first hour, you get to explore the mines with people hard at work. You get help from this giant sentient tree that has a crush on you. That's weird, but okay. There's this baby that you can name early on in the adventure and watch it grow up over time. I named mine Blimp, by the way. Look at him. He's adorable. He has my eyes. And then later on, look at that. The Gorons are here. Love those guys. Oh, Ralph is here too. And he rocks a diagonal belt buckle. Dude is crazy. Now contrast this with Seasons, which has almost the same exact setup. Due to the power of the Triforce, Link gets transported to a new land, this time Holodrum, and after a little bit of exploring, you run into Impa and the Oracle of, this time Seasons, Din. And then you're partying, you're having a good time, but hey, the sky goes dark and a tornado steals the Oracle away, and they are now held captive by the evil Onyx. And then, yeah, you go on a quest to save Din this time. The world may be different, but a lot of the same perks still apply. Plenty of new characters like these cute little guys in the lava world of Subrosia. There's another big sentient tree to guide you, this time one that doesn't have a massive crush on you. At least, I think so. And since I played ages first, I got to see Adult Blimp right from the very start. Look at him. I'm so proud of them, they grow up so fast. And hey, look at that, the Zoras are in this one. Oh, I love those guys too. Only downside, no Ralph. No Ralph in sight. Spoilers, I like ages a lot more than Seasons for multiple reasons. And this is primarily one of the reasons why. That diagonal belt, it goes really hard. But don't get it twisted, the premises of these adventures are definitely very similar, but the adventures as a whole, they totally stand out on their own. Coming from Link's Awakening, they are very much cut from the same cloth, we're built on top of the same engine after all, so things like customizing what both face buttons do, that's still here. But also progression between dungeons remains largely the same as well. It is still a classic Zelda game after all. But this time, there's rideable mounts! 3 of them! Hoo-hoo! Dude, at 3 different points in both games, there are 3 animals that you can help out. The Dodongo Dimitri, the Flying Bear Moosh, and the Punching Kangaroo Ricky. And after you help them, you get to pick one to use at your command whenever you want. And there are multiple sections of these worlds that require each of their abilities. It is so awesome. The only downside is, yeah, you only get to pick one, and then once you do, you can't call the other 2. That's kind of a shame. I think it was to emphasize playing this game multiple times, but I'm not gonna do that, and it's okay. It's not like there's a better choice than Ricky anyway. I know this is gonna lead to some fighting in the comments, but listen, the tried and true theory, everyone's allowed to have their own opinion, it's totally fine. And also, have you seen that video of the kangaroo trying to break into that guy's house? I would much rather be a friend of a kangaroo than an enemy. Not gonna happen. I'm making the right choice here. Moosh is a beanbag chair. Who cares? I made the right choice. Both games also share a very similar overworld gimmick, where you can transport yourself to a different form of the land that you're on when standing on specific pedestals and playing an instrument. In Ages, you swap back and forth between past and present, and in Seasons, you swap between spring, summer, fall, and winter. And this is the primary source of interesting design for both Labrynna and Holodrum. Learning which of the time periods or seasons is the key to progression. And even though we only got 2 options in Ages and 4 in Seasons, the level of complexity is actually pretty identical. Labrynna, being time-based, allows for puzzles that are a little bit more nuanced. You get to do things like talking to Goron ancestors to influence how their offspring will act in the present. While Holodrum, being season-based, allows for puzzles that are a little bit more simplistic, like water being frozen when it's turned into winter, and special flowers that are growing when it's turned into spring. The seasonal changes lead to more visually distinct aesthetics, while personally speaking, the time period changes lead to deeper and more interesting character interactions. Both are good, they both have pros and cons, and they're both good at the thing that the other game isn't. They do complement each other really well. Yo, at some point in Ages, there's this one island where these little lizard people steal all of your gear and you have to go get it back. This is prototype Eventide Island from Breath of the Wild, and I will not be told differently. Mother f***ing tingle, baby! And the dungeons are also a major standout. As I mentioned before, Ages is based on puzzles and Seasons is based on combat. And before playing these games for the first time, I didn't really understand what that meant, but quite frankly, it really doesn't get much deeper than that. The dungeons in Ages have many more instances of figuring out how the items that you get within are used to flip switches and open doors and whatnot, the typical thing you would expect, but just a whole lot more of it, while the dungeons in Seasons have many more rooms that are all about just throwing a bunch of enemies at you and defeating them is what will open the door. Ages has the switch hook item that lets you swap places with certain blocks to pass over holes and ledges and whatnot, and Seasons has the magnetic gloves to push and pull you away from different magnetic poles, while also making the most annoying sound in the universe. Obviously, Ages still has combat and Seasons still has puzzles, so while these differences are apparent, like these games as a whole, they all still feel like proper fleshed out dungeons, and it all comes down to which style you prefer. And yes, to me, I think the Ages dungeons are some of the best in portable Zelda history. The dungeons and Seasons are fine. I could see if you really like the style of the combat in these games, and you would definitely prefer Seasons over Ages, totally makes sense, but yeah, for me, puzzles all the way. If anything though, the most interesting thing about the dungeons and Seasons is that some of them are almost straight up recreations of the maps from Zelda 1 on NES. And even a heavy majority of the bosses are also from Zelda 1, with some also being from Link to the Past. It's a ton of references, and I'm a big fan. It's funny, the story goes there was supposed to be a third Oracle game to release alongside the two that actually did release, which would feature Furore as the Oracle, and it was essentially supposed to be a full remake of the game that started it all. But considering Seasons already has so much of that game's core DNA, I wonder what that game would have been like if a third Oracle game did release, and what that adventure would even provide at all that would set itself apart from the other two. But I'm sure Nintendo realized that trying to link 3 separate games together would lead to headaches for gamers in every generation until the end of time, so it was likely scrapped for good reason. I mean, if you really try to think about it, what is another game that released with 3 versions simultaneously? Mega Man Star Force 1. You know it's bad if Star Force is the first thing to come to mind. Apparently, during development, what was initially proposed was a whopping 6 Zelda games for the Game Boy Color, each of them releasing like 4 or 5 months apart, and yeah, you know what, I'm really happy that didn't happen. A lot of conversation gets muddied with the Oracles duo due to how the two games relate to each other, and honestly, I really don't think I helped matters here, but hey, the bottom line is I think more people simply know what these games' gimmicks are all about than actually having played them. In my opinion, it does not matter which of these two you start off with, they are both incredibly well done standalone adventures with a pretty unbeatable feeling during the second game talking about your first quest. That is so damn cool. And hey, if you do go the distance, you even get to appreciate Zelda and Ganon showing up too. Yes, Zelda is actually here, but only after linking the games together. That is quite the reward. For me, it's no contest. The 2 Oracle games are the most underappreciated titles in this series. And dude, Capcom made these? What's interesting is while Capcom is the logo at the game's boot up, it's important to know that these games are actually worked on by a subsidiary of Capcom at the time, Flagship, a team that does have a few other titles under their belt for sure, but most notably, Kirby and the Amazing Mirror and Kirby Squeak Squad. What, me? Miss an opportunity to talk about Kirby? It's just kind of funny. Actually, you see in Kirby Squeak Squad, one of the copy abilities that was introduced is Animal, where the main gimmick are your claws that you can not only use to slash enemies, but also dig tile by tile in huge piles of dirt. Oh hey, look at that! The Legend of Zelda, The Minish Cap, the third and final Zelda game developed by Flagship, and this time for the Game Boy Advance. Dude, this game is so good. Releasing years after the Link to the Past GBA port, further finalizing the idea that this system was basically just a handheld Super Nintendo, here comes The Minish Cap, an entirely brand new adventure that plays similar to A Link to the Past, but with a sweet shrinking down mechanic that really feels like we're approaching top-down Zelda perfection here. It's been 100 years since the tiny Picori descended from the skies to assist in ridding the evil spirits from the land of Hyrule by providing the Picori blade to a hero wearing green. And this year we had a sword fighting tournament which was won by the mysterious Vati, who... I mean, yeah, he's evil. Like, you can't have a name like Vati and not have bad intentions. Like, you were born for this, dude. Vati shatters the Picori blade and opens up the bound chest, which had been sealed by the Picori blade, unleashing evil monsters across the land, and turns Princess Zelda to stone just for good measure. Yeah, now it's time to go on a quest to save Zelda. You knew this was coming. But this time with a talking hat. It's the one thing this franchise had been missing up until this point, and I hope in an alternate universe, Ezlo and Cappy are friends. This is also yet another one of those games where Ganondorf doesn't make a single appearance. I'm really loving this move to create new villains that try to stand out on their own instead of just ultimately being a servant to Ganon. Like, I really like this whole thing a lot. Like, yeah, the Oracles did have Ganon in the ultimate ending, but that's mostly Twin Rova's doing, and like the boss fight is pretty easy, like a 2-minute thing. He's an afterthought as far as I'm concerned. And hell, even in Link's Awakening with the final boss being this like weird shadow nightmare vision of maybe Ganon, leaves a much better impact anyway given that game's dreamlike narrative. Sorry, am I getting sidetracked? You see, Ezlo is a Minish, and he was actually Vati's mentor at one point, but after he was given a magical cap that allows the wearer to grant wishes, Vati used it to become a powerful sorcerer, turning Ezlo into a cap in the process. It does sound pretty grim, but Ezlo has one magic trick up his sleeve. He's a hat, he doesn't have sleeves. If you jump onto specific pedestals, you can now shrink down in size. And this is it. This is the core concept that Minish Cap is all about. And damn, it is such a strong one at that. The general traversal of the world is as typical top-down Zelda as you can get, but it is so damn cool shrinking down in size so you can walk these tiny hallways avoiding giant sticks under giant leaves, being able to float and push yourself along on these lily pads. And dude, the first boss is a stupid choo-choo, but big. This is incredible. We got big Yoshi's Island energy here, and I'm a big fan. Of all of the Link gets to travel to an alternate version of the main world idea in this entire franchise, I gotta say, turning small is easily my favorite. Maybe it's just because I've always loved when games have you feeling really tiny, like big Chippendale Rescue Rangers for the NES vibes here too. Love that game. But like, when you're tiny here, you get to talk to animals. And that's just rad, okay? But really, when you boil it down, this is simply a super polished old school Zelda experience, almost like a spiritual successor to Link to the Past over 10 years in the making. Many of the items are familiar, but then you also get the Gust Jar to shoot out puffs of wind, the Cane of Paki that lets you flip different items, as well as create these high jump portals out of these little holes in the ground. Yo, the Four Sword is here and it lets Link duplicate himself. That's really cool. These new items are sick. Dude, and the dungeon designs are superb here too. Big shout out to the Palace of Winds, dare I say, one of my favorite dungeons in this entire franchise. The music is great, the general aesthetic is great, and there's an absolutely epic boss in the sky. I love this so much. Hey, look at that, all the oracles are here too, look at them. Hell yeah, man. And plus, when you really look at this whole thing big picture, like, it's a game about becoming small and it was released on a system meant to be thrown in your pocket. That's just cute. That being said though, the world does feel relatively small too. You check the map here, it's like, there really aren't that many areas to explore. This Hyrule is fairly fun-sized. But because the playstyle is so much fun, and these areas are so densely packed when you consider the places you can get to just by shrinking down, this is far from a problem. If anything, the main complaints go down to items like the Kinstones, but honestly, I kinda like these too. There are these characters all across the land that have at least one half of a kinstone and they request the other. There's a handful of different colors, a bunch of different shapes, there are a ton of combinations, and you find kinstone pieces in a ton of different places and ways too. It can get a bit grindy, but in my opinion, it is fairly inoffensive. It's kinda like that part in Skyward Sword where you would slash these blocks with a Skyward Strike and then something would happen in the sky. Like, something about this dynamic I'm really a fan of. Now on the other hand, grinding out the stupid gacha machine for over 100 stupid figures just to get one stupid piece of heart, yeah, that's trash. It's already bad enough grinding for some of the kinstones, but this? Oh god, no. As good as this game is, one of the series' best, no doubt, don't complete it. Just enjoy the ride at your own pace, and then call it quits when the credits roll. It is not worth the literal heartache here. You may have morbid curiosity and think, oh, it can't be that bad. No, just please don't do it. Simply don't go for 100% completion, and Minish Cap will remain one of the best adventures Link has ever gone on. And that would wrap up the Capcom flagship Zelda trilogy. 3 adventures built off of the basis of Link's Awakening and a little bit of Link to the Past to show off Hyrule and a few other kingdoms in a totally fresh way this series was not doing up until that point. 3 awesome games, Capcom did a great job, high recommendations all around. And then things got weird. In a shocking turn of events, Nintendo decided to make a direct sequel to The Wind Waker, but rather than do it on a console, it would be the DS that would become the home to Wind Waker 2 and 3 essentially, Phantom Hourglass, and Spirit Tracks. I can kinda see the rationale behind this, you know, Toon Link and the cel-shaded art style of this iteration of the universe is able to be adapted to the relatively low-powered DS more easily than the more realistic proportions of the lame non-Toon Link. So ditch the sprites and make the character models look decent, slap in a bunch of touchscreen and oh god, microphone gimmicks, I'm gonna vomit, and go about your merry way. Hell, these games even have multiplayer and like no one talks about this. But like I said, we'll get to it later. Kinda similar to the Oracle games, both of these adventures often get lumped together in the same conversation, and while aesthetically there is a good amount that sets each game apart, mechanically and how you progress through the adventures, yeah, both of these games are pretty damn identical. Phantom Hourglass tells a story with the same Link and Tetra from Wind Waker, while Spirit Tracks takes place 100 years later, with a new and shockingly identical looking Link and Zelda. PH Link and Tetra are on another seafaring adventure before an evil ghost ship ambushes them, taking Tetra and causing Link to fall overboard. ST Link is working to become Zelda's official royal engineer, but when you become warned of the suspicious Chancellor Cole and his evil intentions, you get it? Cole, cause it's a train game, haha, he violently reveals his evil scheme by eliminating the Spirit Tracks. Ha! That's the title of the game! And his assistant Burn, kills Zelda. But it's okay, she's not really dead, she's just like, kinda dead. It's actually pretty funny in context, like Zelda really hates being a ghost this time around, and you know what? Can't blame her. Both of these stories give serviceable enough plots as a mean to get you started doing the typical Zelda thing. But again, props for continuing this portable Zelda trend of not relying on Ganon to get your point across. I love this, even though, you know, Chancellor Cole and whatever the hell is at the end of Phantom Hourglass, like, who even cares? I appreciate the attempt. And also, Spirit Tracks has train people in it with, like, Ace Attorney level punny names. You know, the main one is named Angine, like engine, hahaha. I'm a sucker for this dumb stuff, man. Once you get the initial story out of the way and the game started, I feel like these games are a little more similar to each other than the Oracle games are. Mostly just the visual dressing and the main form of transportation being the primary differences. See, the main thing now with these games is everything is done with the touchscreen, like, god, it's like basically everything. Moving, attacking, utilizing items like drawing a path for the boomerang, and aiming where your arrows go. It's all via touch. And like, listen, I love gimmicky Nintendo nonsense as much as the next guy. Rhythm Heaven for the DS, all touchscreen. You don't see me complaining. Metroid Prime Hunters, that's already pushing it, but here? The problem soon becomes apparent that this control scheme simply makes it more difficult to be as precise as you know you could be if you had actual button input. And that's ignoring the fact that your dumb fat fingers are already blocking part of the screen at all times. Attacking, it can be kind of precise, you tap the enemies you want to go for, slashing is already kind of a mixed bag, but tapping, I mean that works. But moving and trying to not jump off of a ledge by accident, yeah, not so much. Heaven forbid you try to push and pull blocks at a decent pace too, like god, it's so slow and you gotta tap and hold on the direction you want to go, it's not intuitive at all. Oh god, and in Phantom Hourglass, rolling was done by making tiny circle motions at fast speeds on the edge of the screen. It sucks a whole lot. It became tapping the edge of the screen in Spirit Tracks, thank god, but still, not great. The thing is though, considering games like Metroid Prime Hunters and Kid Icarus Uprising also exist with very similar problems, your mileage is going to vary with any game of this style. The DS brought along with it a lot of gimmicky ideas, some of them worked and some of them didn't, it's just a matter of how open you are to them. But all things considered, there are still really clever uses of these gimmicks. Like at any point, you can pull down the map and write down clues, something I wish every Zelda game had. There's this part where you have to literally blow sand off of a sea chart before you can use it, and that's just cute. Oh, and my god, like one of the coolest parts about this game, there's one part where you have to imprint a label onto another chart, and you do so by closing the DS shut to transfer the location onto the map. It only happens once, but it is so damn cool. Remember when you would close a DS during a Mario game and he would go bye-bye? Bye-bye. God, I miss the DS so much, man. Dungeons will sometimes have these really neat puzzles too, like here in the Temple of Courage, where you have to draw out which part of the invisible floor is actually a walkable path. Microphone gimmicks, on the other hand, when it comes to the DS, typically I hate them, Like, one of the first items in Spirit Tracks is this whirlwind thing, where you not only aim the direction with the touchscreen, but you can only use it by blowing into the microphone for an extended period of time. It sucks. But hey, you know what? The Pole's voice enemy is here, and you can only attack it by first blowing into the microphone to stun it, which is a reference to the original Famicom game, where you could defeat them by talking into the second controller's microphone, because yes, the second controller for the Famicom had a microphone. That's really cool. But then, like, you think you have something good on your hands, and then there's this one part where you have to yell into the microphone to get a discount from a shop, and you actually kind of have to do more than just prank the microphone by blowing into it. Instead, you have to actually say something really loudly into it, and that's less cool. I'm the hero of time. Ultimately though, if you put aside the controls, let's say you're a big fan of them, there are still two big problems that plague both games. I was considering saying the dungeons, but truthfully, they're just kind of fine. They're unremarkable, but they're fine at best. They just don't have much in terms of fun and memorable set pieces. But for what they are, they get the job done. Except for the fact that you do physically carry the big key to the boss door now because you're so tiny and oh, that key is so big. That's adorable. Nah, the real problems are the way you transport from location to location and the required temple that you return to in between every dungeon. In Phantom Hourglass, you got the boat, and in Spirit Tracks, the train. Now in Wind Waker, I love exploring because I'm always in control and it is so satisfying saying, well, let's see what's this way, and just going there. Here though, you forego any control. You draw out the path that you want to go with the boat and you stick to pre-assigned paths with the train. You click go and you just go. You do have choice in what direction you go, but it's still weird that you're just letting the thing go and you just kind of let it happen. It's a damn good thing. The theme song for the train overworld is as incredible as it is in Spirit Tracks because man, this is such a pace killer, it's crazy. So much of these two games are spent just staring at the screen and tapping the enemies that they throw at you as a means to ensure that you don't fall asleep. They even threw in collectible bunnies into Spirit Tracks to help with that as well, and I gotta be honest, it doesn't really work. It's cute that there's a new side quest here to worry about, but still almost falling asleep. And then the temples. Oh man. The Temple of the Ocean King is one of the worst things in this entire franchise. It's bad enough that you return to this place after every dungeon that's already kind of repetitive. The same thing happens with Spirit Tracks' Tower of Spirits. But in the Ocean King, you have to repeat the floors that you've already completed in order to get to the part that you couldn't progress through last time. It's not like a straight shot to the next floor either. You have to redo the puzzles. Why? But don't worry, a checkpoint does pop up to skip some of the floors. Once. Halfway through the game. Why only once? Oh, and dude, these sections are timed. You get it? 'Cause Phantom Hourglass? Ha! It's the title of the game. And on top of that, it's stealth-based, so you gotta try avoiding detection, else you get chased. And if you get hit by the things that are chasing you, not only do you have to redo the floor that you got hit on, but you also lose time. And however much time it took you to get to that checkpoint is gonna be how much time you start off with when you jump into the checkpoint when you return next time. So if you didn't have enough time left when you jumped into the checkpoint the first time, then you have to redo all the floors anyway to have a better time. This is horrible. Thank God for the Tower of Spirits, man. They removed everything that made the Ocean King one such bullshit. No more time limit, no more needing to redo floors unless you want some extra items. And since Zelda is a spirit now, she has the ability to take over phantoms once you get enough of the Tears of Light. And you can use that for puzzles that are exclusive to this tower, making it a little bit more exciting to return to. This whole thing is actually really cool. When she's taking over a phantom, she's invulnerable. You can use her to get to high places. She can distract other phantoms. For having a Zelda game where you finally get to have Zelda by your side the entire time, they did a damn good job making her cool. Oh, and also Linebeck is here. He's kind of a dirtbag in both games. The one in Spirit Tracks is many generations on, but he's still the same dirtbag as he was in Phantom Hourglass. He's really cool. I like him a lot. He's a dirtbag, but I don't care. He has my vote. But he's no Ralph, damn it. At the end of the day, while Spirit Tracks, in my eyes, is a vast improvement over Phantom Hourglass, and they are neat novelties if you want to see how a full Zelda adventure translates into a fully gimmicked out DS game, these still end up being pretty low in the franchise as a whole to me. Phantom Hourglass, I would say, is my least favorite Zelda game outside of Zelda 1 and 2. I love and appreciate a lot of what these games represent, and you can tell the developers really tried utilizing the hardware to the best of their abilities with both of these titles, and there are plenty of bright spots that show that. Like these little musical musical flute segments and spirit tracks. They're really charming, and they do require the touchscreen and the microphone at the same time. But for me, when it comes to comparing it to all of the other games in this video, these are at the bottom of the Zelda portable ranking list. I know many people love these games still, I do, I know you're out there, but I'm sorry, I'm not that guy. But hey, once again, Linebeck was here. Listen, okay, these games are still good, just relatively speaking, compared to the other games we talked about in this video, they're not as good in my humble opinion. The angry mob is still coming, isn't it? While I may not be the biggest fan of the DS games, I can still appreciate them as more experimental takes on the typical formula. Definitely better to look at them in that light as opposed to a proper evolution of Zelda like we got with the jumps between the Game Boy Color and the Game Boy Advance. But after fulfilling its purpose, it's time for the final entry in the dedicated Nintendo handheld console lineup. The Legend of Zelda, A Link Between Worlds. Hard to believe this game is over 10 years old now. Sorry for making you feel old in the process, by the way. But damn it, this game has not aged a single day. Minish Cap may feel like a spiritual successor to A Link to the Past, but I can't believe that Nintendo made a full-on actual sequel to A Link to the Past as a part of their process to revitalize 3DS sales in 2013. And they released it the same day as Super Mario 3D World. Like, oh my god, the Xbox One released the same day. That's what did that console in, man, not the other shenanigans. It's that deadly Zelda Mario combo pack, holy. And immediately, we are back to a traditional button layout now. Plus, we have smooth analog movement for Link, which, god, it feels so good. The speed and reaction time that you have between pressing the B button and the sword slashing is so damn quick, like, dude, this game feels great. But yes, this is in fact a sequel to A Link to the Past. I mean, for crying out loud, in Japan the game has a big old 2 on it. Hyrule is virtually the same layout as it was back on the Super Nintendo, and while it's not the Dark World this time around, Lorule plays a very similar role, as a slightly modified and visually darker variation with an incredible theme song to accompany it. Or rather than just being the same game all over again, we got a handful of gimmicks and changes to the Zelda format that make this adventure fresh. For one, we got wall mechanics now, thanks to the new villain, Yuga, who happens to be able to turn people 2D. What a power! They took Super Paper Mario and made it a guy. Love to see it. You see, this new bad boy has not only trapped Zelda into a painting, but all of the sages as well. And for any normal plebeian, that means you're trapped forever. But for Link and his brand new magical bracelet, we can just pop in and out whenever we want. This means that we now have a whole new world of walls to latch ourselves onto for traversal, and this is awesome. Sorry, this time Link becomes a wall. Sounds like the dumbest idea ever conceived, but wow, leave it to top tier game developers to make this an incredible mechanic. Attaching yourself to moving walls to travel over gaps, being able to easily wrap to the opposing side of a building, simply dodging certain enemies in boss attacks. Like there's this one boss that is a wall for a shield, you attach yourself onto it, and then he pulls it behind him like, oh, where did he go? And then you slash him from the back. God, it's so cool. This is such a simple idea that is really used to its maximum potential here, and it spices up a world that you thought you knew from the 16-bit days. But arguably even cooler, once you pick up the Master Sword after a few dungeons, you then have the freedom to tackle the remaining 7 dungeons in any order that you want. Rather than relying on the old style of getting an item from a dungeon and using that to get to the next one, you now have the option to rent nearly every single item super early on thanks to the newcomer, Ravio. And yes, rent is the proper word, because if you die, you lose your items and have to rent them again, or spend even more to permanently own them. But quite frankly, after you get enough hearts, dying is rarely an issue, at least for me, so never really was a big deal. But if you're bad at Zelda, you're probably gonna die and rent these items a lot. Sorry about that. Not only does this turn the rest of Hyrule and the entirety of Lorule into an open world, there's also the hidden Maiamai quest. This Maiamai mother lost 100 of her babies. Quite the irresponsible parent, but that's neither here nor there. And these children are everywhere, and it is so rewarding just seeing one on a wall, hearing one nearby, and finding them under a rock. You get one like every 10 paces if you're paying attention. What's also cool is that you also don't have all of Lorule accessible at once. It's chopped up into different segments, where it's required to find the portals in Hyrule to travel through, which then leads to more exploration, meaning your chances of finding more Maiamai are greater, and remembering where these bombable walls are or something else along your journey, it's easier than ever before, and god, the moment-to-moment gameplay here is damn near perfection. It's worth mentioning here too that Lorule has its own Princess Zelda, taking the form of Princess Hilda. I like her, she's kinda cute. Like, let's be honest here, the story in this game is pretty simplistic. I would argue more simple than like every other portable Zelda game thus far. The main focus of this adventure is just getting on with it and letting you free into the world. Though, that being said, the production values whenever the cutscenes do play out are honestly pretty impressive. Like, this game looks really friggin' good, okay? Zelda is taken, Ravio gives you items, Hilda gives you some advice. Go, who cares, stop reading text, just go. Ganon does finally play a prevalent role in a portable game here, but Yuga is still a pretty strong antagonist. Because, hell, even with Ganon back, he soon merges with Yuga to become a brand new thing. It's kinda just a means to have a visually similar final boss fight with a Ganon-like character, but now with wall attacks. And that's fine, because hey, the entirety of these portable Zelda games did something different with the final bosses still, even though Ganon is technically here. Every Zelda game in this video had a different antagonist, and that's amazing. And plus, we got this brand new sweet artwork replicating the classic Super Nintendo style, so any complaints I have about throwing Ganon back into things should really be thrown out the window because this artwork is so beautiful. I love this so much. It's a shame Link doesn't have pink hair in this one, but you know what? I'll still take it. The pacing, man, the pacing of this game is ridiculous. You are always moving. You are always finding new things. Always slamming face first into every wall you possibly can just for the hell of it, you never know. And you're maybe thinking to yourself, well, what if I don't care about the Maiamai? And first off, what are you, heartless? Look at them. Second off, when you buy items from Ravio, you are then able to upgrade them by returning batches of 10 baby Maiamai to their mother, making them a lot stronger and more useful. This is great. Honestly, I don't even care about the whole renting versus buying thing, it's just a mean to turn the game from a typical linear affair to an open world playground, but the item upgrading really elevates things to the next level, and man, I love it so much. And since the main focus here is just getting to the next dungeon, it does help that said dungeons are incredible. Since now you can only enter the dungeon after having a specific item instead of getting the item partway through it, that means that we have dungeon designs with cool item-based puzzles as soon as you walk in. Clearly, this game doubled as a test for Breath of the Wild when it came to taking the typical Zelda conventions and changing them up and building a new adventure around those new ideas. And while I think ultimately I may still prefer Link to the Past because I do prefer the typical Zelda conventions, it is hard to deny that A Link Between Worlds is not only one of the best 3DS games, but one of the greatest handheld games Nintendo has ever produced. Also, there's baseball. Best Zelda game. You ever see that image of how Nintendo managed to nail the top-down look for this game and it's just Link doing the... That's beautiful. With the Switch being a home console and handheld hybrid, and Nintendo sticking to completely unique experiences for the dedicated handheld mobile scene, I think this is where we can end the lineage of handheld Zelda games. Sure, you can now play Skyward Sword in handheld, and we never know what the future of weird, interesting Zelda ideas will take us, but come on, you know that's not the same thing. These adventures all really tried to do something different with each entry. As the scopes kept growing for the console games, trying to be more and more epic with each one, the handhelds were just trying to do their own thing. They were filling in the time between the next main console game, but at the same time, they were doing something completely original. Yeah, some of these ideas are certainly dated, but it cannot be stressed enough that there was a lot of impressive things that were attempted and achieved with these 7 games that saw the light of day. And also Frog Game, do not forget about Frog Game. If there's any takeaway out of this is that you haven't played Frog Game yet, and you should probably play Frog Game, it's really good. Then, yeah, all that's left are the Tingle games, which are obviously Zelda adjacent, as well as also on handhelds, and then all of the multiplayer games, which primarily made their homes on the handhelds as well. We're gonna get to all of it in due time, don't you worry. I just covered 8 games in one video, okay? I need a little bit of a break. And before anybody gets on my case for not going really in detail with the games I scraped the bottom of the barrel to talk about, I wasn't going to talk about every single handheld Zelda thing that ever existed, okay? Wow, you talked about the Game Watch but didn't go highly in depth with it? Like, what do you want me to say, alright? It just sits right here. This is a handheld Zelda game video. You don't hold it. It just sits on your wrist. We're not talking about wrist sitting games, okay? Duh.